Hello and welcome to the debut episode of Comic Reactions. I am your host, Matt Little. Thank you for coming on this journey with me over the course of this show. We are going to jam on, discuss, review, celebrate everything about the greatest storytelling medium in the world. That's right, I'm talking comic books. We're kicking this show off with a story arc that was kind of a revelation to me as a 40-year comic fan, and I love that. You know, I'm old enough to have seen a lot of stories cycle back around. You know, Rage Against the Machine, it's coming back around again, and you see sort of the same problems pop up in a character's life with just a slight tweak, and at a certain point, you know, comics can start to feel just repetitive, like you've seen everything, right? It's just the nature of kind of being in the same space for decades upon decades. But this story and this story arc was showed me something fresh, something new and exciting about the character that I had never really kind of attached to before, and now I'm a huge fan, and I really want to see how this plays out and how this story evolves the character moving forward. We're talking about Nightwing, we're talking about Tom Taylor and Bruno Redondo's run that is currently going on in the series, and we are starting with Volume 1 of that run, Nightwing Leaping into the Light, aka issues 78 through 83 of the current volume of the series. What volume is that? 3, 2, I can't remember. It is so hard to keep track of numbering these days, but we'll drop a link in the description to make sure that you have some place where you can grab this specific trade so that you can read this after we talk about it here. And if you've already read this, get ready to follow along and probably yell at me when I get stuff wrong. And of course, I should mention that I will be looking for your responses. We'll be covering the mailbag at the end of the episode, along with a little bit of a letter from the editor, which is me talking about my goals for the show, what made me do this, where I've been as a fan, and what I want to contribute. But right now, I think it is time for us to get deep into Nightwing. Oh boy, get ready for a lot of dick jokes today, gang. It's time to get deep into Nightwing, and let's start off by talking about the origins of the character. So who is Nightwing, you may ask? And if you're a super dork like me, you may be like, which Nightwing? Because there was a Superman side character named Nightwing. That's actually where Dick got the name for his version of the character. But let's start with Dick Grayson, former Robin, son of the Flying Graysons. He was a circus kid. One night, his parents die on the job. Thanks, OSHA. Where were you on this one? They fall from the trapeze with no net below them, and they make a peanut butter and Grayson sandwich on the ground. Dick is distraught, but he's taken in by a billionaire who happened to be at the circus that day. Thank God Bruce Wayne likes weird entertainment. He takes Dick, adopts him. He can't stand the fact that he sees an orphan who was victimized and an orphan who was created by tragedy, just like he was. That's a little bit about, is that Batman, I guess? Is that what we're going to say, Batman? Well, whatever. But he takes Dick in, and Dick, who is thirsty for vengeance as a child, and Bruce, who's not great at being an adult, thinks, yeah, that's a good headspace for a kid to be in right now. Let me teach you how to focus that into skills that you can use to beat the shit out of people. And that's just what he does. He trains Dick and gives him a costume and a moniker. Dick becomes Robin, the Boy Wonder. And now Robin has been around almost as long as Batman, right? He debuts in, if I'm not mistaken, Batman 39? 1941, somewhere around there. And fun fact, Robin actually has more Golden Age comic appearances than Batman himself, and that is because Robin had a long-running solo strip in a comic series called Star-Spangled Comics, and we will be taking a look at one of those stories as our backup strip later in the show. But for right now, Robin continues on for decades as Batman's sidekick, eventually founding the Teen Titans alongside some other teenage sidekick superheroes, and of course, Snapper Carr. Seriously, it's just a teenager who liked to snap and say weird things. It's a very poochy character. He had to go. His planet needed him. But this is the start of Robin kind of breaking out of the shadow of Batman. Eventually, in the Teen Titans pages, Marv Wolfman and George Perez do such great work with the character that Dick himself doesn't feel like Robin fits him anymore. He wants to step out of the shadow of his father. He wants to step into the light of his own life. So in Tales of the Teen Titans 44, I believe, please check me in the comments, he drops Robin and announces he is a brand new character called Nightwing. And again, he gets the name Nightwing from that Superman character. That was what he was reminded of when he was putting on the costume for the first time. The original costume designed by George Perez, by the way, awesome. Crazy disco collar, deep V. I mean, this guy could have gotten it on any of MTV, The Grind episodes in the 90s. Honestly, I could see this outfit on the catwalk today. Louis Vuitton, if anybody is at a major studio, no, this, Mason Margiela, get this on the runway for Spring Summer 24. How about it? Anyways, Nightwing goes on for the next several decades as his own character on his own adventures. He settles in the 90s into a nearby Gotham City called Bloodhaven, where he has problems of his own and enemies of his own and an identity of his own that really makes Dick begin to feel like a more fleshed out character. One of the cool things about Dick Grayson, as I've been talking about this, is that he's one of the few comic book characters that's ever been allowed to evolve. Part of the idea of an IP, no matter what decade that you're in, is that you want sort of everyone to have that same base reality, right? Like Spider-Man should always kind of be within this age range, single, blah, blah, blah. You know, and sometimes when they do actually evolve a character, they just do it and then put the toys back in the box, right slightly where they were before. But at this point in 2023, Dick has been Nightwing for, I think, almost as long as he was Robin, and possibly even longer. So this is really an identity that stands on his own. And I think that with the Robins that have come after him and what Nightwing has done to this day, Dick is more recognized or equally as recognized by fans as Nightwing as he is as Robin. That's a little bit about the character itself. Couple fun facts. This isn't the only alt identity that Dick has had. On 2 separate occasions, he has also served as Batman. The first time was in the 1990s, right after Nightfall and Zero Hour. Batman was recovering from getting his back broken over Bane's very strong knee. And the second time that he became Batman was in the aughts during Grant Morrison's incredible run on Batman. They put Dick in the costume, and you can read all of that in Batman and Robin starting in 2009. Kicks off with some jaw-dropping art by Frank Quitely, which that entire run I highly recommend. But that is a story for another day. Right now, let's give you a little bit of a recap as to where they were in continuity when this story kicked off. So in IRL, right about this time, as this story was being published, the previous 2 years before that, Tom King was in the back end of his Batman run, and during that run, there's an incident where Nightwing, for circumstances, winds up in the crosshairs of the KG Beast, who tries to put a bullet in his head, slightly misses, but does some serious brain damage to Dick. When Dick comes to, he doesn't remember who he is. So over the next sort of 2 years of Nightwing, he's running around town trying to do good with a little bit of pain on his face. And instead of calling himself Dick Grayson, he's going by the name Rick Grayson, R-I-C, just like Ric Flair. Woo! Could you imagine if you were like in a dark alley, someone was about to rob you, and you're like looking for help, and then a shadow overtakes them, and you see a cape, and you think, oh, Batman's here, and instead it's woo! And of course, Ric Flair is there to put you in the figure 4, I guess. I don't know. Where were we going with that? That was dumb. Okay, so through circumstances, eventually Dick regains his memory, he regains a sense of who he is, and he puts the costume back on, and that, of course, takes us to this run right here. Again, Nightwing Volume 1, Leaping into the Light, originally published in Nightwing Volume 2. Oh, that's my notes say 2, issues 78 to 83. So this story really feels immediately like a real collaboration between Tom Taylor and Bruno Redondo. It's not just like a writer-driven story, right? You can really see the character and the storytelling coming through in the art. And as the entire run progresses, I mean, this is still going on right now, you see Redondo get more and more comfortable on the page. You see them like getting more and more comfortable figuring out how they want to tell these stories, and bigger risks getting taken in the storytelling, and it all just pays off in brilliant ways. There's an issue down the line that is a 22-page single-panel action scene. You just have to read it to believe it. There's also another issue that just recently came out this summer where the entire story is told from first-person perspective through Nightwing's eyes, or should I say Domino Mask. Really cool stuff. And you'll see some of that here, and you'll see that storytelling sort of expand across these 6 issues as well. You'll also notice, if you had been following the story at the time, that immediately the look and feel of this comic is very different than what had come before it. You know, Nightwing is part of the Bat family, and so much of the Bat family leans into dark, gritty illustration, thick black shadows, inky, scratchy lines, a lot of just rough texture, and this is immediately different. This is very, very comics. The coloring is bright, it's vibrant, the line art is very thin and distinctive, and it just really immediately sets itself apart and establishes a visual storytelling style that tells you, hey, you're on the same ride with the same character, but we've switched tracks. And in an interview with CBR, the creative team said that this was something that was premeditated. It was about taking everything I loved about this character and bringing it all back and not quite reinventing it, but just finding a way to make it all work for today and find that sense of fun again and who he is again and remind the world of that. And that's a quote from Tom Taylor from that CBR interview. Link will be in the description. So we kick off issue 78, aka Chapter 1, with a flashback scene. This is Dick as a kid, and he's watching Barbara Gordon get bullied by a bunch of rich kids. Ironic, because Dick is also living in a mansion. He sees them pushing her around. He hates bullies. Dick's always hated bullies, and he gives them kicks the snot out of 4 of them, and before the richest kid says he's going to fetch his daddy on them, Barbara's dad shows up, Commissioner Gordon, aka Gotham City Police Commissioner Gordon. He gives Dick a ride back to Wayne Manor. Dick thinks he's going to get scolded by Bruce because Bruce believes that heroism should happen behind the mask. He wanders off sullen into the kitchen, and here comes Alfred to talk to him, and Dick braces himself for a lecture, but instead, Alfred tells him that he is proud of Dick for standing up for someone when he's not in the mask. This is the dichotomy of Dick's 2 father figures in his life, and this dichotomy gets explored throughout this story and this run. So much of Dick's life has been informed by what his father, Bruce Wayne, has taught him, but what lessons has he learned from his other father, Alfred Pennyworth, aka the butler? You ask who raised Dick? The butler did it. The other thing about this awesome scene here is it really feels like a mission statement for this entire story. Like I said, we're talking about the father figures and the approaches and how much you do with the legacy that you are handed by the generation before you. So we cut to an amazing double-page spread of Nightwing literally leaping across the sun as it rises in the early morning across Bloodhaven. And looking at this bright coloring and this work, in an interview with Popverse, Redondo told them, we wanted a timeless kind of look. And we wanted it to look way comic, to feel like a timeless type of comic. So taking things from different comic stages and making it all work together. So this opening scene, we see a bunch of bullies again, picking on a 3-legged dog, which just rude as shit. That is a surefire way to tell me that you are a piece of trash in a story, is if you're picking on a dog, let alone a dog that doesn't have all 4s. Nightwing doesn't like it either. He makes quick work of these jerks, and he picks up the dog and brings him home. Meanwhile, we cut to Blockbuster, aka Roland Desmond, aka one of Nightwing's #1 adversaries. So, quick backstory, there have been several Blockbusters, but this one's first appearance as Blockbuster was Starman #9 by Roger Stern and Tom Lyle. Blockbuster was always this big dumb asshole with super strength, and then during the Underworld Unleashed arc in the 90s, he made a deal with Necron to become super smart as well. So since then, Blockbuster has sort of been this Kingpin-style mafioso type that has super strength, and he leads through intimidation, and he sort of runs Bloodhaven in the background. The police, politics, everything runs through Blockbuster. And that's what we see here as he is talking to the mayor of Bloodhaven about how he is disappointed in what the mayor has been doing in town. And he expresses that disappointment by grabbing the mayor and crashing his head like a grape. Cue the kids in the hall, a little crash, 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 crash. So then he turns to the woman standing beside our mayor and announces to her city council president that she is the new mayor. This is also a brand new character to us, and he lets us know her name is Melinda. Melinda Zuko. Now, if you have been in the Batman lore for a long time, you know that Zuko last name, and you know why that counts in a Nightwing story. Tony Zuko is the guy who had Dick's parents killed. Oh shit, this is already a tangled family web. Cut back to Dick, who gets home where Barbara Gordon's just chilling and waiting for him in his flat. These two have had a will they, won't they relationship over the years, and I know that if you are a Nightwing fan and you're listening to us right now, there's two sorts of camps for Dick, right? There's two Dick camps. There is the Dick and Barbara camp, and there's also the Dick and Starfire camp. Now, this is kind of come under fire more recently in the comics for some stuff that's been revealed. We can definitely have that discussion at another time. But right now, the biggest love interest in this run for Tom Taylor and Dick Grayson is Barbara Gordon. Not a lot of spoiler there. That just sort of comes out throughout the series, and you'll see. Anyways, Barbara's there to reveal that in the wake of Alfred's death, which also happened in that Tom King Batman run, Alfred left Dick with all of his money. Now, you'd think, oh boy, the butler left me with a couple dollars. Well, Alfred wasn't just polishing silver while all of these Wayne Enterprises smartasses have been coming and going from the mansion over the decades. Alfred's been listening, and he invested his money quietly and just as wisely as the Wayne Enterprises board of directors did, because he leaves Nightwing, Dick Grayson, with a Bruce Wayne level of money. Literal billions with a B. So it turns out Pennyworth, not an accurate last name. By the way, never insult the help. You meet the same people on the way up as you do coming down, and you never know who has that money. Now that I'm thinking about it, if he was listening to all those conversations, is that technically insider trading? Maybe Alfred actually does have some crimes to answer for. We'll let it slide for now. Anyways, Dick reads a letter from Alfred where he tells Dick how proud he was to call him his son. Dick tears up at this, and honestly, so did I. Because one of the things that I really love about this story and that we see throughout this run is there's no fear of Dick in calling both Alf and... Alf. Yeah, he's calling Alf from Melmac his dad. No, he's calling Alfred and Bruce both dad. You know, cue the My Two Dads theme. It's a small thing, but watching Dick accept love in this way that Bruce never could really shows how Grayson has evolved past Batman and Bruce. And it really shows how important that caring influence Alfred gave Dick growing up. Bruce rejected that. He ran off around the world to train himself to be a super spy. He thought he didn't need any more lessons from Alfred. And we see here just how good Alfred was as an influence over the younger generation. Also aside, big heart in this scene. It's one of the things that Taylor brought throughout this story. And I think that's really, again, the mission statement for Dick himself. Tom Taylor telling us in an interview with Screen Rant. To me, he's kind of the heart of DC Comics, in a similar way that Superman is an alien who happens to be the best human on the planet. And Dick is that too. He can be the heart and soul and carry the entire DC universe as far as I'm concerned. He's always been a character that I've loved, particularly that Chuck Dixon, Scott McDaniel run that I read religiously and bought every trade of. I love those books. And the original pitch was all, Dick Grayson is an A-lister. We need to prove that. We had other opportunities, Bruno and I, to work on other stuff, but both of us were really keen to work on Nightwing. And we just thought, this is a character who can be what other characters can't. And we'd love to show that and prove that and put him on that podium. Just getting him to tell that, it's been great. And same with Babs as well. And Redondo says, everybody wants to be Batman, but Dick Grayson is the one who grew up with us. And it's a different relation from the reader that feel this guy was Robin. You know, he broke up with his parents, and as everybody does. And then he's his own character, so you can feel him closer, someone you can identify with more, but he has a better heart. I think it's really solid. Obviously, I agree with that statement as well. In our final scene of this chapter, we wrap up popping over to visit Melinda Zuko again, who's coming home to her bodyguard, which we haven't named yet. We'll get that name later. Asks Melinda if she's ready for Dick Grayson. Zuko says no, but soon she will be, while she's standing in front of a poster of the Flying Graysons with Dick circled in big red marker. Specifically Dick as a boy, not Dick's dick, and not the word Dick. Issue 79, Part 2. Dick and Barbara go out for a pizza to discuss what to do with his billion-dollar windfall. This is what I imagine it's like after you hit the Powerball. Maybe I'll find out someday. Who knows? I'm just imagining. The Powerball is our Alfred Pennyworth, folks. Let's hope that Alfred comes true for one of us someday. Anyways, Dick gets the bright idea to start spending this money to feed the homeless of Bloodhaven. He wants to use this to make a difference instead of just pouring it into weapons and action the way that Bruce does. He wants to approach problem solving differently. So he heads over and buys a ton of pizza from Marv and George's Pizzeria, an homage to Marv Wolfman and George Perez, of course, the team that made that huge change in Dick from Robin to Nightwing. As people are hanging out and eating, and obviously this is a simplistic view of like how to, this doesn't solve homelessness, it doesn't solve hunger, obviously, but his heart, I think, was in the right place doing this. But while he's thinking about his heart, his wallet gets stolen by a group of teenagers. Thankfully, there's a tracker in it, So he follows these kids as Nightwing, and he watched them as they lift another wallet from, Salvatore Maroni, who, by the way, is having a meeting with Mayor Melinda Zucco. Now, Salvatore Maroni, another famous crime boss in the world of Batman. So the kids grab the wallet out of Maroni's pocket, and he flips shit when he realizes that it's happened. But before his men can pull out their guns and give chase, Dick swoops in and gives the KO to all of them. Then he follows the kids eventually to what looks like a homeless tent city, where they ask him if he's, quote, the man without a heart, and if he's there to hurt them. Now, Dick's obviously confused about this. He has no context for any of this, but he hears the fear in their voices, and instead of chastising them for stealing from him, he forgives them, sympathizes with them, and tries to figure out what to do next, because here is an encampment of homeless teenagers in his town. We finish the chapter with Barbara and Dick realizing that he wants to be the thing that his parents never had, a safety net. He wants to be that thing for Bloodhaven, to catch the fallen, to help them, to help those who maybe can't even help themselves, give them the means to help themselves. Earlier, we talked about the kids mentioning the man without a heart. So one of the people Dick was helping earlier in the night at Marvin George's Pizzeria was a man named Martin Holt and his son Elliot Holt. He winds up buying them a month of stay at the Bloodhaven, I believe 3 seasons. So a fancy hotel, everything's paid for, everything will be paid for. Dick even tells them, if you need longer, I'll extend the stay. This feels like such a too good to be true moment for this family. And as they wander off into an alley to go get their stuff, they're stopped by a mysterious man in the shadows who is holding a weird gun. Now, Martin sends Elliot away, confronts this man, and the man uses the gun to literally rip the heart out of Martin's chest. We're going to learn next issue that this is a brand new villain called Heartless. And again, pretty thematically on point, because this is the Heartless Man versus the heart of the DC Universe. And that takes us to issue 80, aka Chapter 3. So Dick wakes up to the police banging on his door, and of course they tell him about and accuse him of the murder of Martin Holt. Barbara does a 180 as she was leaving his place. Relax, Dick slept on the floor, she slept in the bed, but she comes back to the apartment where they both get grilled by the cops. The cops ask him the most important question: what is the nature of your relationship? And we get to have a fun little moment where even Dick and Barbara squirm, and that's the one question of all of this that they can't answer. But through the interrogation, they learn that someone has been stealing hearts from the homeless all over Bloodhaven. Now we know who that is from the last issue. So after the cops leave, Dick and Barbara put their detective masks on and begin theorizing how these things are connected. And we get one of our first innovative double-page spreads here, right? We've seen some awesome spreads so far. For example, when last issue, when Dick pops down off the roof to stop Maroni's goons from whipping out their guns on teenagers, we're starting to see Bruno start to cut loose. And we're going to see a lot more of these throughout the run. It's an amazing spread where we kind of get two sort of storytelling planes. On the far left of the double-page spread is a vertical story as Barb and Dick go up vertically through the apartment building. And then the second one is the last 3/4 of that double page spread as we see an overview look, sort of a Zelda 3/4 overhead style of Barbara and Dick making their way around Dick's apartment and talking about the situation at hand. Just an amazing way to liven up what is a talking head scene. So Dick calls up Tim Drake, aka the best Robin, as they all call him, and asks Tim to go undercover in the teenage tent city and try to figure out what's going on with these attacks, and also to see if Elliot Holt is turned up there. So thanks for your help. Oh wait, it's not just Tim, it's Tim and the dog, who doesn't have a name yet, but will soon. And spoiler alert, love that name. Tim infiltrates the group and learns that lots of these kids have the same story, that their parents were killed by having their hearts removed from their bodies, and now they have no recourse. They are out here on the streets fending for themselves. A group of these kids were the ones that pickpocketed Dick last issue. So Tim's about to leave with this information, but here come two of Blockbuster's flunkies, Brutal and the Electrocutioner. I feel like Electrocutioner, that sounds like a Metallica song from their like speed metal days. That could have been on Ride the Lightning. Electrocutioner! Well, I guess that was a little more Iron Maiden. I don't know. These two idiots show up, and they don't realize Nightwing and Robin are both on the scene and immediately get their asses handed to them. However, in the ensuing fist fight, a fire starts that begins to set ablaze the entire tent city. So here they are with a bunch of teenagers in the middle of a fire that they started. And here, going back to the lessons of the fathers we talked about, Dick decided to take care of business the way Batman would, with violence, and it always leads to these unforeseen consequences. So, as Nightwing is trying to save everyone, he gets Tim to lead all of the kids off and away from the firefight, but he turns around and Dick finds himself face to face with the man of the hour, Heartless. In Chapter 4, aka issue 81, we jump right to the inauguration of Mayor Zuko, who then meets with Blockbuster, who wants to know her plans for, quote, his city. And then the rest of this issue pretty much is the confrontation between Nightwing and Heartless. So like I said, the kids evacuate as Heartless and Dick go toe to toe. And we learn that Heartless is strong, he's augmented, and he's powerful, but he's got sloppy technique. It's like a 50-year-old man who buys a Lambo but can't drive stick. Right? So Heartless reveals he wanted the kids to flock to the pier, so he sets off a bunch of explosives that trap them between the water and a burning shoreline. Meanwhile, Dick and Barbara don't know what to do about these concurrent situations. They roll the dice and they send an SOS to the maritime radio channels, hoping that the boats in the local Bloodhaven area will show up, and show up they do. And we get a lot of fun homages to previous creators that have left their mark on Nightwing. So boats like the Devon, aka the Devon Grayson, the Seeley after Tim Seeley, the Jurgens after Dan Jurgens, the Leonardi after Rick Leonardi, and they all show up to help Tim safely get these homeless teenagers to safety. Once Nightwing kind of gets the okie doke that all the kids are safe, he passes out from both exhaustion with his fight with Heartless and also the smoke inhalation from the fire raging around him. So in our next scene, he wakes up in his own bed with Barbara and Tim at his side, and Tim takes this opportunity to name the dog Bitewing. Come on, that is just too perfect. I love that, and I won't hear otherwise. But we also learn more about Mayor Zuko. So not only was she Zuko's daughter, and Zuko bounced on her when she was 8, but she was also raised by the Marconi crime family, which is why she was having that meeting with Salvatore in the previous issue as well. A lot of deep bad ties with this person. I think, we might be in for a rude awakening with Melinda Zuko as the mayor of Bloodhaven. So that night, Dick changes back into his work uniform, and he breaks into Zuko's home, hoping to find some answers. Why does she have all these ties to the worst people in Dick's past? But instead, he finds her bodyguard, Audra, who kicks the shit out of him, and then Zuko clocks him in the head with a bat, and for the second time this issue, Dick is unconscious. Can this guy get a CTE wellness check, gang? He comes to once again, but this time tied up in a chair, and he sees that Zuko is holding his domino mask, and she recognizes him as Dick Grayson. Dick kind of freaks out. He breaks the ropes that are holding him, and he backs Zuko into a corner. But before he can act on whatever he wants to do, she reveals to him that she was Zuko's daughter, and she was raised by the Maroni crime family, but she is Dick's mother-fucking sister. Dun, dun, dun. Chapter 5, issue 82. There is a cadre of superheroes waiting to kick the doors and windows down in Melinda's home because Dick is in trouble. However, with this revelation, Dick calls off the cavalry and has a sit down with Melinda. He's just been told he has a sister. And now, let me give you an aside from my own life. If you think something like this is a sort of trope that could only happen in comics, my friend, in 2007, I was 27 years old. My father was 55. And one day, he calls me to tell me that he was just told that he had a sister. My grandmother, unbeknownst to anyone in the family, became pregnant before she was pregnant with my father. And this was the late 40s, which was pretty societally bad because my grandmother was never married. She was an independent woman all her life, but she got pregnant and she went off and she had the baby and gave her up for adoption. And now I have a beautiful Aunt Pat who lives in South Carolina. Her and her beautiful, wonderful family this stuff happens. So, a lot of times you see something like this in a story and you go, oh God, how like anyone believes that could happen. I do believe it could happen. Dick is introduced to Melinda's mother, Meilei Lin, and boy, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Again, names are my pet peeve, even if it's a fictional character name. I always want to get them right, and I hate when I feel like I'm not 100% on a name. Lin gives us her story. So flashback decades ago, Meilei was bought and paid for and shipped to the United States specifically to be Tony Zuko's wife. And big surprise, Tony Zuko was abusive and shitty. So one night during a trip to the circus, why do I always come back to the circus? Lin takes her moment and she tries to escape Zuko's clutches. She runs to the back tent area, and before anyone can stop her, she hides out in the trailer of one Mr. John Grayson, Dick Grayson's dad. Zuko makes his way back, what do you call that, backstage? Would you call that? I don't know. In the performers-only area, Zuko's stomping around trying to find her, but John Grayson kind of cuts him off and also gets an assist from his performance partner, Mary. I want to point that out. They were not together at this point. Zuko wants to know where his blushing bride is and doesn't use his words, tries to use his fists, winds up getting his ass kicked by John Grayson, who winds up being super condescending to Zuko as he leaves, gives him a stuffed teddy bear as a prize for his day at the circus. I mean, it's a fun comeuppance, but this will come back to bite him in the ass later. Over the next few months, Meilei travels with the circus. She kind of just hangs out behind the scenes. Her and John eventually become romantically involved. And when I mean romantically involved, gang, they was banging. Raccoons be fucking, and so do circus people. She gets pregnant. But before she can tell John, at a stop in Star City, Tony Zuko and his men show up once again. They get the upper hand on the circus gang. They knock out John. They take Meilei Lin, and they leave John with a souvenir, the same teddy bear that he handed to Zuko all those years ago. So Zuko kidnaps his wife back. Eventually, Zuko rushes her off to Bloodhaven, not Gotham City, where she has a baby, Melinda, who is raised as Melinda Zuko, even though Tony kind of knows this isn't his daughter. So when Melinda's around the age of 8, Meilei decides that she's going to make her break once again, only this time Tony's kind of over her. He's onto a new model, so he lets her go. Meilei takes Melinda to the only other place that she remembers to go in the United States, and that is to the circus. She tries to find the one man who showed her love once again, and she finds John Grayson, but what she also finds is a married John Grayson. And what she also finds is a married John Grayson and his wife, Mary, and their son, Dick, aka the family of flying Graysons. And rather than interrupting this family and this life that John has created for himself, Meilei and Melinda duck out to create a life for themselves on their own. And this whole setup creates a brand new reason for why Zuko eventually kills John and Mary Grayson. It was a premeditated thing, and it was all about love. Ugh, doesn't it always come back to romance? Personally, I love this reveal. I think it's huge. I think it really speaks to the character of both Dick and Nightwing and the entire lore of the Batman and Nightwing universe overall. This is another huge reveal. So Dick has been unconscious twice and has just had 3 huge bombshells dropped on him. That this woman's involved with all the crime families from his past, that this woman is his sister, and that this woman's mom is the reason his parents are dead. Before Dick can process any of this, there is a knock at the cabin. Audra lets the gang know that there are cops at the door, and they have brought Blockbuster with them. Cliffhanger, leading into our final Leonard Part 6, aka Nightwing issue 83. We pick up right where we left off as Blockbuster and the cops kick in Melinda's door, only to find her and Audra tied up, and Nightwing already escaped. Nightwing makes it to the roof of the building, where Blockbuster also makes his way up, and this is a classic Nightwing Blockbuster showdown. Again, Tom Taylor not trying to reinvent the wheel just yet, just building on the pieces that were already available to him. We get a classic showdown, and as Dick gets the upper hand on Blockbuster, one of the helicopters full of cops, I guess helicop, begins opening fire on Nightwing as well. Obviously, Blockbuster's bulletproof, so he doesn't care if they're firing on him. Nightwing uses this opportunity to jump right at the gunfire. He lands on the whirlybird, and he takes out all the cops in the helicopter and uses it as his escape vehicle, which is pretty awesome. He makes it home, falls asleep, and once again, he wakes up, and it's the morning, and he feels like, wow, I thought I would sleep a lot longer than that. And Barbara, who's hanging out in his living room reading the internet, tells him he did. He had been asleep for 2 days. That was a pretty restful sleep because he has a plan for Bloodhaven. And we watch this plan play out. We watch the conversations that lead up to this plan play out throughout most of the rest of this issue. So we see him stopping by a bunch of heroes. We see their reactions to what Dick has told him his plan will be. One of these includes a sit down with Superman. And this conversation that he has with Superman, again, is really important to the baseline of the character. You know, Superman is the reason that Dick calls himself Nightwing. He also, Superman drops a little bit of knowledge on Nightwing. He tells him, hey, I'm going away for a while. John, my son, that's right, if you didn't know right now, Superman has a teenage son named Jonathan Kent. He tells Nightwing, hey, I'm going to space for a while. I don't know when I'm going to be back, but my son needs someone to lean on, someone that is good in this world that I can trust. And Dick, there's no one better to do that than you. He didn't say Batman. He came to Dick Grayson. Now, this story of Superman leaving Earth is covered in Philip Kennedy Johnson's run on Superman, aka Warworld. We'll probably get to that in a later episode. It's a great story, but this also sets up some amazing character dynamics with Jonathan Kent that play out throughout the rest of Tom Taylor's run, both here and on Jonathan Kent's solo book, which Tom Taylor also writes. So we end the story at a press conference. Dick is about to reveal to the world as himself what his plans for Bloodhaven are. He's backstage. He's about to go out to visit the press. But before he can step out on stage, Barbara grabs him and she kisses him as hard as she can. And she tells him, go get him, Boy Wonder. And here, by the end of the 6th issue, we've been wondering, will they, won't they? Tom Taylor says definitively they will. And this kicks off the romance in Dick's life throughout the rest of this run. Are you guys feeling Are you guys feeling the Barbara Gordon love, or are you a Starfire shipper? I would love to know. Hit me up. I'll tell you how to do that later. Dick steps onto the stage in front of the world to announce the Alfred Pennyworth Foundation to help bring the downtrodden of Bloodhaven back to the light. Alfred Pennyworth Foundation will be addressing homelessness, poverty, and whatever else there is that can help catch the fallen people of the city. This will be that safety net. Alfred was Dick's safety net. He was born of tragedy, and he leaned into that tragedy, and Bruce continued to use that tragedy to shape Dick, because that's the only way that Bruce could see the world, was how tragedy affects you as a human moving forward. But Alfred, don't forget, was that safety net for Dick. He was the person that told Dick, you need to process your emotions. You need to feel what you're feeling. Don't stuff it into a bat cave. Let it out. Leap up into the light. We end this story and we end this chapter on Heartless, sitting in front of a collection of hearts in, I guess, canning jars. I don't know. But he also reveals that he has been watching this press conference, and now Dick Grayson is in his crosshairs, and he wants Dick Grayson's heart on his shelf. He doesn't know that he's already confronted him once, and it looks like they're heading for more of that down the line. But that concludes this opening salvo of Tom Taylor and Bruno Redondo's run on Nightwing, leaping into the light. So let's take a look at a couple of reasons why I love this story, gang. One, it's a fresh painted coat. After years of Dick being pulled into the darkness of the world of Batman, we finally see Dick instead pull the darkness of that world into the light. Hope. This story is above all hopeful. It looks forward by adding new elements to Dick's past and at the same time respecting it. Heart. There's so much heart in this run. I've said that so many times here, but again, that opening scene in Chapter 1 sets up our mission statement. It just really sets up the themes that the creative team wants to explore. Taylor tells us what he wants to tell us. Then he tells us, as a journalism major, I love that. Shout out Penn State University. We are. And the last reason, the art. Now, Bruno Redondo is a vet of the industry, but I had not really followed his career up to this point. Boy, am I regretting that. Every chapter of this book, you see him grow and expand his storytelling language. Chapters 4 and 5, they feel like they might have been up against a deadline. There are 2 other pencilers credited on chapter 5, and you can see that on display. And that happens. It's kind of the gift and the curse of a monthly production schedule in comic books. But when he has time to cut loose the way he wants to, boy, oh boy, does he deliver. There's a lot of, like I said, a lot of common conversation scenes throughout this story, a lot of talking heads, and he takes those and he lets the characters act with expressive faces, body language that tells you how they're thinking, what they're feeling, and innovative page layouts that don't just make you feel that you're just looking at 9 panels of the same heads over and over again. All right, every good comic deserves a backup strip, and it's time to look at today's. I mentioned earlier that Robin had more Golden Age appearances in comics than Batman himself, and that was thanks to a run of solo stories in a series called Star-Spangled Comics. But did you also know Dick Grayson, aka Robin, has an island named after him? It's true. This story happens in Star-Spangled Comics issue 69. Dick in a 69. Yeah, I heard it. I'm sorry. I'm 43 outside, but inside I'm 12. This is one of Robin's Golden Age appearances in that solo title. The plot of this story is classic Golden Age nonsense. Somebody steals a nuclear bomb, basically. And Robin tracks these thieves to a plane where they have packed it in and they're going to drop it out of the bomb bay doors somewhere. But during the flight, Robin hops on the plane. He sneaks aboard the plane. He beats everybody up. And in the ensuing chaos, the only way that he can see to get rid of this bomb is, hey, let me just drop it. I think we're safe enough over the ocean. Great teenage logic, by the way. So he just drops a nuclear bomb out of this cargo bay, and it was not on the water. He actually drops it on an island that just wasn't marked on any maps anywhere ever, and it also just so happened to be completely uninhabited. But the bomb goes off, completely nuking this island of whatever it was, and this is my favorite part. The government is so grateful that Robin saved the day that they say, hey, you know that island that you found and immediately blew up? Well, guess what? We're naming it after you. So congratulations, Robin Island. Thanks, I guess. Definitely not a tourist destination, not a place that you're going to be able to pick up an Airbnb anytime soon. You can read more about that at one of my favorite columns on the internet, Comics Should Be Good by Brian Cronin. One of my favorite lunchtime reads back in the day on Fridays. I used to just love picking up his column and eating lunch at work and reading about comics because I love the way he talked about them. So thank you to Brian Cronin for bringing this story to my knowledge and to my attention as well. We're going to close up here with a little something that I like to call, I guess, letter from the editor. At the end of these issues in the future, we'll get ourselves a little letters page, and I'd love to hear communique from you folks out there. Right now, we only have an email address. Like I said, we're starting small. I wanted to get this out there rather than perfect it first. But you can reach out to me with your thoughts, feelings, concerns, complaints. ComicRxNS, that's ComicRxNS at gmail.com. I'd love to hear what you thought of this episode. I would love to hear what you think about comics in general. And I'd love to hear if you have a suggestion of a story that you would love me to cover in a future episode. If you've made it this far into the podcast, the first thing I want to say is thank you so very much for listening. I love comic books. I talk about them all the time, and it means so much that you chose to come to this conversation and hang out with me today. I know that your time is at a premium. I want to use this show and this podcast to, one, stretch myself in a medium that I am a huge fan of, but I also want to flex my own creativity and my own talents and my own skills. I really enjoy having conversations about comics. I love having projects like this in front of me that give me not just, it's not a reason to love comics, but it's a place to funnel that love of comics in what I think is a positive way. I grew up reading comics. I mentioned before that I started when I was 3 years old. My first comic was an issue. It was G.I. Joe #1 right off of the racks at Triangle News in Beaver Falls, Pennsylvania. Speech Bubbles and TV Guide were how I learned how to read as a kid. Those were the two things that I would take on my own, to occupy myself whenever my parents were busy with other stuff. It's a huge part of me. I feel like I've learned so many lessons from heroes and from stories that were told there, for good or ill, I guess. But I want to celebrate comics, and I want to show people that maybe it's their first time reading a comic. I want to be the gateway to that drug. I want to show them how to read comics, how to interpret what they're seeing on the page. I want to pick the things that I think people identify with. I want to say I don't think you're going to hear me often talking about stories that I don't like. I'm 43 years old, and at this point, I want to celebrate as much as I can. We get one trip around the sun, and hate is such a reductive emotion. And listen, I am a connoisseur of bad art, like hilarabad art, the kind of thing where the sincerity overshadows the talent, the sincerity of intent, and we'll probably eventually read some stuff that was definitely cynical cash grabs. Like I could see us reading Marvel someday on this show, but I want to celebrate. I want to walk people to the love. I want to show them and show you why I love comics. I hope that I can continue to be that voice of fun and love in this medium, because as we know, a lot of people come to a genre like this as a way to escape. There's a lot to want to escape from in this world, and as such, when this is your escape, you hold it sacred to your heart. You hold it precious, and that's why sometimes when there's change in comics or there's change in art, it's perceived as a threat, right? Like, who are you to change this thing that keeps me safe, that keeps me grounded? And there's an argument to be said on both sides of that, but I think too that if we look at the world and we look at life as an evolving thing, as something that we take and we learn from, we make mistakes and we build from those. And these characters can do that too. These stories can do that too. And it's important to do that. Every comic is somebody's first, sure. And I have mixed feelings about that. We can talk about that in the future, and how that approaches storytelling. But everyone picks up a comic for the first time, and they get that one shot to have that first impression. And everyone knows that loves comics how great that first impression was. It's why you're still here. It's why I'm still 40 years later sitting in my office by myself talking to you about comics, because it's the greatest storytelling medium in the world. I'm starting small here, and I'm gonna grow. I wanted to get this out rather than get it out perfect. That's a flaw of mine in life, and that's one of the reasons I want to start here. We'll continue to build. We're gonna have guests. We'll probably start with some video in a while. Right now, I just had ankle surgery last week, so I am in a cast, and things are awkward for the next couple of weeks. But once I am fully able to I have to keep it elevated, basically 23 hours a day, still for the next 2 weeks. But over the next couple of weeks, as I'm recording episodes and I'm able to get up and move around a little bit more, we'll be incorporating guests. We'll be incorporating video elements, and I'd love to hear more of what you would want to see in the show as well. Like I said, I have that email address. We'll start establishing our socials. We'll start establishing ourselves in different areas, and I want this to be a conversation that grows just like Dick Grayson did in front of us and with us. Thanks for taking the first step on this journey with me. Thanks for being here for this episode. We have a lot of fun stuff planned down the road, starting with next issue. Next issue is another episode about evolution of character. I'm talking about Spider-Man Life Story, issues 1 through 6 by Chip Zdarsky and Mark Bagley. This is a can't-miss story, and we will be talking about it all next week. I hope you can make it back then. If you have an opportunity, please rate or leave a comment about the show on wherever you get this podcast. It helps so much. And even if you just rate it, I know it's weird to put your handle and your review on something, but if you could take the time to do any of those, I'm telling you, that helps so much. And that's just going to help us spread the word about how great comics are. I love comics, and I know that you do too. Thank you so much, gang. I will see you next week. I have no sign off.